Hello, my name is Adil Bokhari, and this is
Geometry. My name is Damjan Jovanovic, and welcome to our talk. It's been a while since we did one of these, I think.
yeah, 2 years almost. I think it's almost like quitting a channel and then starting back again.
I think our 16 subscribers were extremely sad, but we're back. We're back.
All two of them. Yeah, but just to start things off, I started playing Zelda. And this, I think, is a fantastic bloody game.
Yes.
And
Here's
what
the
was
kingdom.
also incredibly striking for me is how the graphics are the same.
Exactly the same. Exactly the same.
Anything to it. 10 years in the making, and it looks the same.
It's interesting once you start playing, it takes maybe a half an hour to get used to the grain of the pixel, because it's still like 720p, I guess, the resolution, and kind of low res textures at some point. It's interesting, but once you get used to it, it opens up into this incredibly aesthetic experience. I think they really managed to maximize everything and kind of like still make it an aesthetic experience. I think it's important for them that this is not just a game, that it's more like you're entering into a world of sensations,
Yeah.
But I was kind of like, have you seen the TV show Mythic Quest?
Yeah.
So I was thinking, like, is it Tears of the Kingdom or Tears of the Kingdom? It's kind of, I don't know if you know this episode from season 2 of Mythic Quest.
I do not remember, but I see what you're talking about.
It's called like Backstory, and I think it's one of the best episodes of TV in general. It's not the best, but one of my favorite episodes. It's kind of following the character of the writer of the game Mythic Quest when he was a young man coming to Los Angeles to kind of start or to become a science fiction author, right? And then he meets two friends, and they get hired by the editor, I think, of Strange Stories or some kind of historically important magazine or something like this, right? Where they have Asimov and Ursula Le Guin as kind of close friends of the editor, and they kind of work together in some ways, and you can see his development through the episode, and at one point he kind of he lost a little bit of his confidence in that he can actually write a novel, and then he comes up to like a storefront, and there is a game console there with something playing on it. I can't remember what it was, but and that moment where he kind of recognizes that will be the next frontier of storytelling. And it's so beautifully written as well, when he says, my stories will not be a straight, something like this. They won't be a straight line. There'll be a bolt of lighting, like branching, and kind of, I thought that was so beautiful. And I think that episode is actually written by Craig Mazin, who wrote Chernobyl and also The Last of Us, So I think it's really, if you haven't seen that, you should check it out.
No, I don't think I continued past the first season.
Yeah.
Much further, because I think
this is like episode, I guess, 4 or 5 or 6 of season 2.
Yeah.
And you can totally watch it on its own. You don't need to know anything before it, right?
Fantastic.
But I do think it's one of the really amazing explorations of this idea of like storytelling in different media, and how different people can kind of just work better in different media,
Yeah. And then, just to kind of latch onto it. So in these stories of Zelda and how they deal with images in a very particular manner, and how, for example, the other games around us. So it's always a kind of trade-off between computer graphics. We have players like From Software who take graphics in a completely different style. And then now we're suddenly in a completely different game technologically as well. So these were all plays on a similar kind of technological setup, right? And then some choose and make decisions towards more horsepower versus this, or more consistency towards this or that. But then now with these generative image models, things are suddenly now completely out in the open. Now anyone can do it. First of all, images are cheap. You can produce them from wherever you want. Your grandma can make as striking an image as you might want to make, etc., etc.
Yeah,
that's a funny development, huh?
It is absolutely funny. I think that also there is, a little bit of a backlash from players, and a lot of the people, they do not want to be exposed to AI art as kind of a fundamental experience. They just want to, some people are kind of militant about this, and there will be a lot of kind of fighting, I think, between different factions. From my point of view, I think it's kind of I'm designing a video game right now, so I think it's really helpful to have that kind of set of tools which kind of expand creativity and help you. You can really maybe make much more than you could. And I think the other thing is maybe that it really depends on your personal kind of history and what you know and what you have seen, what you have read, what you have kind of experienced, to what extent you can actually make something that is good. I think I would say, it's a question first. It's a question, because I do think we need to define a little bit of the context of what we mean by when we say good, right? I think one thing is that something is good on its own or with no, as a standalone image. I think that's fairly easy to make, but it doesn't go anywhere, you see. I mean, this is one of the things I was really thinking when it comes to Midjourney, is that it's every image you make is kind of a call to adventure, but it gets unanswered because you keep making more and more, and you kind of end up in different territories, and it's all beautiful, but it's all very shallow as a world building experience.
Yeah, and it's funny to see. So exactly along these lines of what is good. So these images that, at the first instance, the kind of shit you can already produce. So this is all very kitsch. So this, you go online and you look for concept art. Like the first 2,000 images you get, there will be gold mines in between them. So there will be some extremely precious ones in between. But then it's funny, what it does is that it blends them all together, like a big blender, and then blends it all together. And then you get something that somewhat looks like this, somewhat looks like this, while maintaining a kind of kitschiness of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is a little bit, to be a little bit uncharitable towards the people who are kind of protesting AI. Mostly who is protesting AI are people whose work is derivative to begin with.
Yeah.
Actually. And, and kind of commercial illustration artists who are, I mean, yes, I respect it. I respect it, honestly. I think it's kind of hard to get to that level where you're producing interesting work. But that work also has a history, and it has its own database, and it has rules of the style that were set mostly by other people, mostly by kind of the history of art that kind of you have absorbed through your education. Like, you're not really innovating.
Yeah, and even if you are, so but that's something that I believe. So so it's a matter of belief, purely. Let's be clear about that. But even the people who are kind of constructing these styles, it's not ever from scratch. That's one. And secondly, if they are interested in what they're doing, the kind of the end output of it is not something that you shouldn't be copying. So I think the people who are actually interested in these stuff, they would be generous to kind of let these things roll and to, have these things copied over and over again. Because what happens with formats, what happens with masterpieces,
Yes.
they turned into so if you go to the Renaissance, everyone is drawing the exact same way. Everyone is painting the exact same way. Now we have gatekeepers of art history who are trying to say, the Leonardo's brush was like, it had 2 more hair than.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
My God, come on, there's a model at place, and then everyone is kind of doing the same thing, but the business around it, how they're kind of making a community around each other, how they're telling certain stories, that is of value. So yeah, I think just at the level of style, I think it's these things will never be successful.
Right, but I mean, it's just to there is so much misunderstanding of art history from mostly actually coming from the commercial art people themselves in a way.
Yeah.
Like there is this kind of notion that, somehow I was a child somewhere and then I took up drawing and I was good at it. And somehow I developed into this artist who works for whatever, like makes concept art for film or games or something, right? Like that's the basic trajectory in a way. And now someone is stealing my work. And for sure, I mean, on some level, this is exactly true, right? There was no one knew what was happening when Midjourney was kind of compiling their data set, right? I mean, it's a valid.
Disclose it, huh?
They did not disclose it, and they still don't want to show what it's consistent of, and I think that's a problem. I mean, honestly. But on the other hand, you have to, as an artist, I think, you have to do a little bit of like self-examination, and you have to understand a little bit of the art history to be able to have a healthy response to this. That's my only point, right? I think to kind of for the people themselves, I think to find a way to relate to it, because it's not going to go away. Yeah. I do think it's important to kind of read a little bit first. Maybe start with Bokhari, and you'll see where it all comes from. It's a workshop of people copying each other, kind of stealing from each other, and developing through time, almost in a linear fashion in a way, right? Or at least that's how he presents it. That's a different problem.
Yeah.
You can then.
No, and then this is and this is while we're still talking only about the West. If you go to the East, then the idea of copying has a completely different angle on it. So it's a huge quagmire that it's totally true. Yeah, it's impossible to kind of bring it down into a one-liner. I mean,
even the East. In my case, the East is kind of East Europe, and then the history of, like, literally.
For me, that's still West. Huh?
I know, right? But it's even very different in the history of, let's say, Orthodox icon painting, which is not supposed to be original. Like you're not, even with the most important works in that tradition. You're still, it's a collective work in many ways, and
But you know what? I think it's also good that it's happening, that people are trying to sue these people.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
I think this is
absolutely.
And then governments are banning stuff and this and that. I think this, because it's really an insane technology. Huh?
It is.
So this image generation is one end of that, but then we have text, we have these foundation models, we have these incredibly huge models that we have no idea how to deal with them. And then it's good that they go through this culturing process instead of just a pure kind of embrace without thinking of anything.
Absolutely. My always position is like, when in doubt, support the artist, and actually always support the artist, because that's someone who spends their life working on it, and that's what's important. Everything else is kind of bullshit, I think. But I think it's not going to go away, and I think we need to find new modes of thinking and new modes of engagement, and I think that's the task in many ways. Not only to keep making beautiful art, but also like find ways to engage with this world without becoming jaded and feeling exploited, and because that can easily happen for many people in a way.
Yeah. And it's funny how architecture offices, so schools, I won't even mention because the schools have embraced it. Like,
yes, everyone, yeah,
next best thing, and then you have.
We'll come back to this also because people are trying to put their claim that they know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We'll come back to this. I think that's a special kind of person.
I made the first conference on it, and I made a book on it, and yes,
we know these people. We know who they are. They're kind of.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I'm actually interested to see if this would actually work. If these kind of power grabs actually make sense. But yeah,
it would be funny, when we speak about this, it would be funny if that was the actual way that the historical styles were established. It's not like
it's not a nice touch.
No, for sure. But it's just these guys were doing this, and suddenly from the background, almost 50-year-old guy who makes auto portraits of himself on Midjourney is claiming knowledge about AI, right? And then, boom, there you have it. Are you serious, man? It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's funny, but let's wait and see. I think let's wait 5 years at least, and then we can get a sense of, because this is kind of what. For our generation of architects, this is a major thing that happened, right? So
and I do think it's the things that will be actually interesting will come from this generation, and because the others, these kind of like older figures, not older, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's not a thing of age. It's really a thing of experience, because that's where a lot of the power grab strategy comes from. Is from this historically established cycle that they understand, and they understand how it works, and they are able to communicate it to their audience, who then disseminates it. Right. I remember 2 years ago, an unnamed executive of a big London office was extremely interested in NFTs, and then 1 year ago it was the metaverse. And then this year is AI. Hopefully next year they will move on to something else, but it's just like a hype cycle that we have to be critical of. I'm tired of saying, it's all good. It's not good, man. Let's try to.
That's what I'm worried about, that it feels so pathetic,
Yeah.
These power grabs feel so pathetic. And then I would be incredibly saddened by it, and also incredibly surprised if it actually works, because it's clear to everyone that this is pathetic. Within our
but this is the problem. Maybe that's how it works. We don't know.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is, what we don't really understand is what decides anymore, or who decides. Like, we don't have a trust established between us and some kind of instance. Like, who do you trust? I think that's maybe a larger question, is more important than this kind of petty stuff that we're now talking about. I don't actually care about any of this. But to me, it's more interesting. Like, if you spoke to anyone from around our generation, a bit older, a bit younger, it doesn't matter. Who do you trust to kind of tell you that, about what is good?
Who do I trust?
Yeah, is there an institution that you believe in a way?
Institution? No, only people.
Only people, right?
Yeah. There's probably, I don't know, 5, 6 people.
Yes.
That I trust to, that whatever they will say, I will think about it twice. About my work specifically.
Yeah.
This is.
But this is, I think that's my point, right? A little bit. The thing is, there is no overarching, there is no 2 or 3 magazines that everyone is following, or blogs, or whatever, TikTok channels. I mean, it's more like a unstructured goo.
Yeah, but also I think it's always been like that. It's just that we were kind of honed in a particular setup where things are incredibly important and they're singular. So nothing else exists. And then there's like 5 institutions, 1 journal or 2 journals that this is, if you get published in this, that's the way to do it. And then,
Yeah.
oh, this guy made it because he went here. And then for me, this was very striking when I came to ETH Zurich. So suddenly out of this kind of American formulas game, the minute you step out of it, then the world is completely different. And then they have no idea who you're talking about. And I was surprised, and then I was like, this is lovely. This is fantastic.
Liberating.
Yeah, it's liberating because it gets so.
But of course, then you get other names and other people.
Yeah. Then you get into other tracks, but I think this is age. So and a bit of moving around that you realize, okay, there's a few stories out there.
So, well, I mean, not to kind of take away or kind of go away from the topic, but that's what I'm thinking about a lot in a way, right? We don't have, even if we do talk between each other, and we do honestly, and I think we go to reviews and all of that, but still there is not unified design culture, and not unified, but there is not even like a common platform where people can really beyond the surface level, like Adil and stuff. Who cares about that? I mean, like something that becomes a platform a little bit, and I think that's a major problem in general, because it seems like what it makes me feel is that there is no culture actually. Culture is very limited to schools and to kind of, it's very, very small, and it's inconsequential when compared to anything outside of it. And architecture was like a world building, or the biggest thing you can do in the world, and the most important.
Yeah, but this is, I think this is the problem with academia, just completely going off the rails. So it's, and I think it's not so different in other domains either.
Yes.
And so this is a larger problem.
It is. Also in the
problem
art.
or how things are, and it's so you can see clearly now universities are being outperformed by private companies such as Google, etc. If you are a computer scientist, you are stupid if you go to a university.
Yes,
you need to go to Google, you need to go to Facebook, or you need to go get into these kind of situations, because somehow academia is not, or it has shot itself in the foot by kind of perpetuating this rating system of publications and this kind of endless internal kind of roaming around within a box. So things become too cyclical, not cyclical, they're kind of smashing against the wall all the time. Because you keep referring to the same authors, you keep getting, your university gets a higher grade by the amount of publications and not the quality of them, and so on and so forth. So maybe it's even better, because this would be the idea, right? That a university would be a place where you can be a monk.
Yes.
Where you can really find a patch of grass where you can think about the world without being directly involved in it. And then on the other side, you have these Google, etc., kind of R&D stuff, which is, I'm not sure if they're doing that. Probably they're doing that a little as well, but then they're focused on applications, right?
Yeah.
But it's direct application there. It's not basic research.
Much more dynamic. Also much more like it has impact, and it also has cultural impact, which I think is the last kind of straw, with academia, because academia at least had like cultural impact. And I think the art world is kind of similar to that. When you look at what's kind of being perpetuated in the art world, it's kind of ridiculous. you kind of look at it, you're like, what is this stuff? What is this for? You know? And we come from, I mean, both of us, we went to the Stellenschule, so we kind of, we know what it is. It's not like we are coming from the outer space and landing. I mean, we were in the epicenter of one of the kind of most famous like European art schools, whatever, and we saw it, right? So
yeah,
but it's just like, who is this for? I'm very like, it's art for what? I mean, it doesn't do anything anymore. Most of it, right? And that's why I think video games, to me, are so important. It's one of those things. It's I think one of the, because it's considered to be low culture, right? Still, which is amazing, because like, please keep away from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't theorize video games. That's why I don't want people to theorize video games. I don't want people to theorize animation. You know, actually, I read a few like books on animation theory, like the Anime Machine, which is kind of a, you know, based on it's kind of an interesting book actually, but still, I don't want people to theorize it. Like, leave us, man. Leave us be. Criticality.
Yeah. No, but so I would really love it if all of these things exist in parallel and all these bloody economies work. Because I mean, you go to the beach and then there's a guy drawing a portrait of you. Fantastic. You know, let's buy 20 of them.
Yes.
Go to, I don't know, bloody Art Basel, and then you do that as well. And then you go to, I don't know, like a big gallery, and then you do that as well. So all of these economies, and that's the thing, I think they will remain like that while adding new ones. And this was the thing with these NFTs, huh? So everyone thought suddenly,
NFTs.
Wow, that was the problem.
You see, I cannot. To me, that becomes just you. If you're still in NFTs in 2023, I'm sorry for you. Like, personally, I'm sorry for you. Honestly, I don't know what else to tell you. That's what it is. Like, I'm sorry for your integrity as an artist and as a human being. Like, you need to do something else, and you need to think about your life a little bit.
No, but it's great. It shouldn't die. I say it's great.
Oh, for sure. Everything should be more.
Yes.
I'm not saying like someone should remove it from the outside. That's not, you know, I'm just thinking always about a person, about a personal experience of someone playing the game, right? Like trying to find their way in the world. And I think I think people need to learn more, and you know, I think it's more about like maybe understanding a little bit of art history, honestly, and maybe some historical changes that happened. I think someone who's really good at this is obviously Jovanovic. You know, reading his stuff is always quite illuminating, because there seems to be a deep, I mean, he has a deep understanding of art history, and he's someone who has written about, you know, developments of new media.
Yeah. So then it's because there are individual moments that I find interesting within this NFT game. So I saw this particular project by Mario Klingemann. So he's the guy who was doing all this GAN stuff.
Yeah.
And very funny stuff.
Quasimodo.
Yeah, Quasimodo. Mondo.
Quasimodo, yeah.
Quasimodo.
Yeah, his stuff is always amazing. He's a proper artist. It's a kind of a shame.
It's fantastic, because then with this project, I can't remember the name of it, but we'll put up a link or something here. But then he had this project called Frodo or something. I can't seem to remember the name of it. Frodo.
For sure.
But then it was a platform where which you can become a part of, and then you can design with him NFTs. You know, but then it's really a matter of growing a community. So then you are in conversation with particular people, and then you build a few things together. And not that art needs to be a kind of collaborative practice or anything, but then you need to address the economy in some way as well. So besides the medium specific techniques and tools, like it needs to talk about the world and be in the world. That's the problem, huh? So that's the problem I see with the art.
Yes, it's not in the world anymore.
Yeah, they talk about the world, but they are unaware of the place where they are in the larger scheme of things.
Totally, this is totally true, and it's just that's a great example that from Mario Klingemann. But just to say also,
the Frodo project, you mean?
I don't know if it's called. I mean, that's your. We can call it the Frodo project. Frodo. But it's kind of, to me, interesting, and maybe if we would ask him about it, it would be interesting to hear what he might have to say about it, right? Like what happened after the introduction of Midjourney and his new models, right? Because I was following his work for years, right? And then this came out, and there is almost no new work from him. Or maybe there is, but it's very, very, because it seems to be a new paradigm has arrived, and like now anyone can do it. You don't have to train your own GAN. You don't have to set up your own kind of system anymore. And it was like I think that's a significant thing, because a lot of the arguments, also conceptual arguments that people had before, like, but I'm making my own like stuff. Like, okay, so you're making your own stuff. Like, what is that in 2023? I would examine that, honestly.
So Mario Klingemann specifically, because I invited him for a lecture as well, and the best guy, most generous. He is he was there to give away whatever he could, So if you ask him for the code, no problem. But then that's the thing. So he's focused not on on purely the image itself. So there is a world around it which he's obsessed with. He has particular artists that he's obsessed with. He has particular economies that he's obsessed with. He has particular coding paradigms that he's obsessed with. So then the question is grander. So this was what was so exciting with him.
It seems like with the best artists, it's always the grand question, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, still, to me, it's the question of, okay, so what's the response to the? I wish I knew. I don't know, and I'm not only talking about him. There's many other people who I've admired for years and who have done this pioneering work of, and even the people that in your like your friends in the school, who have done like custom models for years and kind of spun fantastic conceptual, philosophical, and aesthetic worlds out of it.
Yeah.
How do they all respond to this? Because this is Midjourney is like the art project, I think, of 2020.
But yeah, funnily enough, the questions remain the same. Because the question previously for these libraries or search engines for images, for text, for 3D models, etc., the question is always like, what do you do when you have access to all images in the world? Like how do you begin to play within this extreme noise, which has no end and no horizon even. And I think that's, and I think these things don't get old. If the question is abstract enough, because then it's an application, right?
I think totally from the point of view of a person, I think it's always interesting. You'll never be bored. I mean, that's not on the table, right? If you're actually doing something interesting. But I think once you try to like reevaluate the position in the cultural spectrum and where you should be someone who is followed, and not followed in the sense of, but somehow
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Somehow understood and kind of like promoted to I would put all of them in this way, right? And I think that's not really happening. That's not really happening. And I think it's a function of many different things, but mostly it's really a function of that we don't have proper channels to kind of to promote. Or this is where it falls apart, my kind of argument too. I mean, what is exactly happening? I think it's a really kind of central question.
But also, I think this this thing of who gets, let's call it who gets popular. Huh? Should we address it this way? Is that?
I mean, you see, but I don't think it's about that. I think it's about art history. To me, that's the question. Like, what is art history today beyond saying no to the canon? Okay, we understand you don't want the canon anymore. Whatever, we want to like deconstruct everything. Fine, deconstruct it. Let's have any kind of art history. But still, if this is a new, like the artificial intelligence paradigm is the new aesthetic notion, and it is. What is the art history of that, and who is going to unravel and kind of make a statement about it? That's the only question maybe I have, because I think that's what we would expect someone to have an idea about it. And it seems like that what is happening is you have people who are hyping it or they have like an extremely narrow commercial popular agenda behind it, or you have this deep research, incredible artists who are kind of, and I knew so many of them too, like Carsten Schmidt, when back in the processing, I mean, he's still an incredible, like he's one of the most important artists, I think in the last 20 years, as far as I'm concerned, and then people like Casey Reese, the Processing Foundation and others, but and then, who gets famous? People.
Yeah.
I mean, I followed people from 2012 when he started. Yeah. You remember we were actually talking about that back in the day, and this guy is doing every day a new render. It's kind of interesting, right? But no one thought that it's going to get so big in a way. And then, of course, I mean, what I thought is going to happen is that he, at some point, when he sold this NFT for whatever, $69 million.
Yeah.
I wrote in my kind of, I wrote, next what's coming is he's going to get interviewed by Hans-Ulrich Obrist.
Yes.
And then the art is going to get normalized, and exactly it happened like that.
Yeah, but this is what you are missing. Huh? When you say we need some art history, man, this is art history. Hans-Ulrich Obrist is the
I know, that's what I'm saying. But why does he not talk about? Yeah, but
so was Vasari. I don't think he would be any different.
Yes. Okay, so that's the bottom line then.
I think so also another thing, maybe for that particular time, things would be a little different because this was not a thing to do, so it was a new format of a new way to talk about art completely, right? With Vasari. So art history did not exist before that. But then through time, how it has become such a gatekeeping organization, Yeah. So this is what it becomes when really they have lost all kinds of, not lost, but swayed on the other side of things, how it became completely entrenched in business.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, so maybe
this is a reason too why I love video games. I honestly, the only point I'm making here is that games are art.
Yeah, I understand. But you know what? I think maybe another more radical point would be that not that we need art history, but we don't need art anymore.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's implied in what I'm saying. Absolutely. Absolutely is implied. I couldn't agree more. I think there is a whole, cottage industry of people using game engines now to make art.
Yeah.
right? And some of them are amazing, but most of them, it's just like, what is this? Why are you doing this? What is this stuff? You know, like if you want a real impact, make a game, man. Make a game. You'll have an audience. You'll earn money if it's good. You'll have cultural impact. You have everything. You'll have a conversation with people who are interested to actually experience something. Like,
You will
why
be in a marketplace. Huh?
Yeah, you're part of the world.
Yeah.
It's real. It's not financial capitalism, like plaything that you're dependent on. And
that's
honestly,
the funny thing. Like, it's hard for me now to go to these bloody Biennales and Triennales and
not to mention Triennales.
They're the worst.
It's the worst.
But yeah, it's endless amounts of seeing things in a vacuum. Yeah. Like, who wants to go through a museum while you have friends around? You know, like, who gives a crap?
Yeah, no, it's really kind of incredible. But the problem is, what I'm saying is, you know, you get young people still roped into this game.
Yeah,
and it's kind of the vampire castle is still there, you know. I mean, and I think that's why you're totally right. We need, like, art is irrelevant. We have to burn it down to the ground because it makes no sense to anyone except the people who are it's like mildly interesting, even to them, you know. And of course, I mean, if you go to a Biennale, you get glimpses of beauty here and there, but that's an accident. That's not, you know, it's not guaranteed anymore.
I mean, if you're a nice person, you will find beauty anywhere.
Anywhere. That's like, not the point.
You can take a bloody walk in your city, you know.
Yes, exactly. Really. Meanwhile, you have artists in the world making video games. And I'm just focusing on video games because that's what I like and and we are both, I think, like really interested in it.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in it as an art form. I think it is an art form, one of the most potent art forms ever, and maybe even like a.
Why is it so important for you to call it art?
Because it's the original meaning of that word, I think, is important, right? It's something to do with quality and the human experience and
but all the sciences are art as well, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if
no, it doesn't matter. I just use this word because I know you're going to say you need a new word, you know, but for sure, and maybe that's true, but I think as an entry point into the argument, right?
Yeah, because I feel like what you're trying to say is that games should be taken seriously. Or?
Well, I think they should.
I mean, I fully agree with that.
Yes, I think they should be taken very seriously.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot, if you play the new Zelda or if you play Elden Ring, you have gone through an experience of a world. And that's, to me, that's art, right? That's the meaning of art. You have learned, you have been transformed. You have been, I think, to me, that's the meaning of it, right? You have been exposed to something very, very deep.
But are we also set on games not being taken seriously? Because I mean, the economy of it is clear, huh? So it makes more money than Hollywood and the music industry combined.
Yes.
So I think what's kind of missing in the setup is it's a problem of culturing. So exactly what you're saying, huh?
Yes, but you were saying it more nicely, so maybe you can just finish the argument.
No, the culturing of it. So there is no discussion about it. So
there is no discussion.
This is what we discussed about this Mid-Journey, etc. How it's being sued by governments. How people are kind of raising up problems. Journalists are writing about it, etc., etc. So there is no such discussion about computer games at all. So they're just growing in a kind of bulbous amoeba-like situation,
Yeah,
right?
there is
But
a little bit of a discussion, right? But I think there could be much more, and there could be an opening into a world of kind of culture and taking it seriously as a philosophical and aesthetic.
and come to think of it, has there been like this drastic adoption of these new platforms, right? Midjourney, etc., ChatGPT, blah blah. Has it been like this with computer games at all, or has it always been kind of a slow moving train?
I think a lot of people play games, as you're saying, but the games are kind of interesting because they always represent something that you do to step out of the reality, so to say, right? Even though the best games and the stuff that we are interested in is actually more about yourself and reality that you inhabit and how you're grappling with it in a strange way. They're in this way. That's why I'm kind of insistent on this, because they are not only a mirror of, or let's say they're not the escape, actually. The games are not escapist.
No.
I think games are where you meet yourself more fully. And to me, that's kind of an interesting parallel with how I understood the notion of, you can use this word again, art through art history, right? Like that art is an endeavor of human maturation, right? It's basically a way to become a human in a full sense, to kind of be exposed to different aspects of your own humanity, right?
Culture, huh? Basically culture.
Basic culture, right? But it's really so as simple as that. So when people, this is why there's I just have this there is a misunderstanding that's happening today. You go to an art show and it's like alien stuff. What is that? I'm kind of like always, and of course there is this kind of argument, which I agree to a certain extent, that's when you don't know what something is, right? You should kind of that's where you're interested in it, and I agree to an extent. But I have been to a lot of these things, and they don't go anywhere eventually. That is the problem with it, right? Like they stay in this kind of estrangement layer, the Australasia layer, right? Like that's where everything is situated, right? So it's kind of like a post-human but it never goes, kind of takes something back from this layer and folds it back into your own humanity or something, like, and that's juvenile, I mean, this is, to me, that's the problem with it. It's somehow, it exposes you to this like the world of the other, without ever having something to say about you.
Yeah. No, and this I think in the kind of domains that we're discussing things in, like for example painting or sculpture or I don't know, other kinds of art, they never had to grapple with amusement. And this is kind of closely intertwined with the birth of computer games, huh? And just their name. So it's almost like we want to discuss an amusement park like we want to discuss Palladio, And I think this is a tricky point for games, huh? To kind of step out of this amusement. So with these Japanese developers that we like From Software, it's not entertainment.
Yes, it's not.
It's not amusement. My God, like you are crying.
But
and it's not even in that sense. Like it's not experientially horrifying, but it's how do you call it? Existentially horrifying.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, this is something that you can only experience through. I think that's exactly the point. If you can get that kind of experience from a From Software game, and you cannot, all these other things in comparison become like a moose bush, you know, kind of like take a little bite, and it's very social when you go to a gallery. It's very like there is nothing comparable, you know, and even if you like, this is what I'm trying to get at. Like, I don't see it really happening, and like art was at least being described historically at some point as a fundamental human like transformation. It's a transformation of the human. And that's education to me. I'm interested in this because I'm an educator, you know, like you are.
Yeah.
So you cannot educate yourself without transformation. Like you have to be transformed. You have to be opened up to a transformation, to some kind of, and this I think is very, you know, it's a very interesting question to like what allows for that today. And we're talking about Midjourney and that kind of experiential economy of multitudes of images. Is that really what allows for a transformation or some kind of journey? And this is what I was saying, telling you before, like the call to adventure of every image gets unanswered because the image goes nowhere. The image stays on your, and you kind of keep scrolling, right? I think a lot of that stuff that happens today with the Instagram, with social media, is the refusal to take an adventure. Right, to kind of use the hero's journey, like famous trope, like there is a call to adventure, then there is the refusal, and then there is the mentor appears, and then we kind of get into the. And to me, I think that the entry point into a real transformative experience is through these kind of interactive experiences. We can call them games, so we don't have to, because I don't have to call them games. Actually, I think it's more interesting to see them as kind of transformative experiences of the self. Who's taking care of the self today? That's the problem, right? Like, and I think that's the bigger historical debate. If we think about the self as a manufactured notion, and you know, there's a lot of stuff to be said about that too, in a way. But there was the self before Freud and kind of the century of self argument that, you know, it's like, oh, it's all advertising. You know, there is a deep kind of desire for, I think, that people have today, and I see this in my students and people I talk to and myself. There is a deep desire to kind of go through something, you know, go through something. Don't stay on the surface. Don't just keep scrolling. Go through something. Go through. And these are all surrogate experiences. Obviously, art is that. I mean, it's not a replacement for the real, whatever real means. But it is something that might open up certain things that you haven't seen before. And I just don't see it happening from the art today. I mean, either in the best case, the best stuff that I see is just so alien and consciously alien, right? It stays in this detachment mode. It's like, I think Duchamp kind of killed art, man, honestly. And we spoke about this many times. He was playing with the world of ideas, and then his disciples came and took it seriously, and they did everything right. They kind of, that was implied from Duchamp. They just ran with it, and now everything is up for grabs. It doesn't matter. But then the question is still, after all of that, like a century of that, right? What will be the transformational experience that you have to go through to even?
Yeah, what I'm struggling with is how to, like, why would this mean that all that came before would be dead? You know, so this is what I'm struggling with. So I understand the other part of it, which I would call tribalisms in general. So you go to these art galleries, you know, you meet a tribe that you don't want to make a contract with. Then you move to another bloody tribe and another one, and you are also part of one.
Yeah.
So it's all these coming together, and there is not a single civilizational idea there.
No, there isn't.
So we're really talking about this idea of civilization or civilization.
Yes.
That brings a kind of coming together and communication amongst the tribes, and then you have a global thing to kind of deal with. But then I think all these kind of transformational experiences or education or however you call it, I think these can happen from any source, right?
Well, I mean, they can happen, right? Okay.
Or would you say that games offer something very particular that nothing else offers?
No, I'm not. I don't think that. I think it's possible in any medium, but I think it's easiest at this. It's most available at this point in history or at this point in time through games. I think, at least. I mean, I'm speaking from my own experience, and it's kind of, there are other ways, obviously, to engage. But if you take this question of we could call it initiation. Actually, I was reading a lot of I told you about Mirsha Eliade, and he's like historical idea, like trying to understand how does one become a human. Historically, that was through ritual, through initiation, in a way. You get like accepted, as you're saying, into a tribe. You need to go through an ordeal. You go through something to kind of, now you're moving away from that childlike, innocence and all that into the world of the human, or the world of the adult, in a way, and whatever that means. It doesn't have to be what it means. I think it's different for everyone who is listening to it, because they will all bring their own notions of what adulthood means, and right. But I think there is something to that marks it in a way, and I think that was maybe, it's a question today, like, how do you manage that as a person? And I think a lot of the stuff that comes out, a lot of the mental health problems that come out, I think, have to do with this exact point, that we do not have structured, meaningful ways to deal with this problem of becoming a human being, because we don't have a kind of a value system that is shared, right? Like, and we have a hegemonic one, which is being dismantled, rightly so. We have the new ones, right, which are extremely partial, to say the least, right? You couldn't take any of these to be a universal human operating system. You couldn't, I think. And I think, to me, that's the problem today. I think, how do you establish a human operating system based on something that offers like a meaningful entry point for someone who is wherever in the world? You and me are from totally separate parts of the world, right? But
communicate, huh?
Yeah,
how to communicate. And then, I would really kind of shy away from calling it a human operating system.
I mean, yes, it's a stupid
disaster.
Yes. But, this is just an analogy.
And then
it's not good.
Yeah.
And we see, but this is, that's why art is always thought to be like so insignificant and peripheral. But that's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's something that it makes you become available to the world. You have to open up a little bit. And I think a lot of the people today are finding that. And that's not being really acknowledged.
Yeah.
Right? And art, the institutional art, can offer nothing to that. Really, really nothing. Well, one other thing besides games that was an experience like that for me personally was electronic music rave scene that I was part of in like late 90s, early 2000s, back in the day.
Right.
That was the same kind of transformative experience. And I think there are still things like that, obviously music, but I'm also worried about music. I mean, have you spoken to your students about it? They have almost like, either they have extremely commercial or extremely niche or somehow
No,
it's
but
unclear.
it's a general condition that surpasses all kinds of media and uh, all corners of the world as well. Because yeah, so I don't know how we got into this kind of tribalism versus civilization debate.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, but this
Maybe.
and maybe that's interesting to think of art, to think of contemporary art in this sense that it has become pure, not propaganda because it was always propaganda, but uh, politics. Huh? So art
Yeah,
is just
politics.
playing politics.
It's just politics.
So it has to
And
name it in a
politics,
certain way. It has to do it, and precisely not politics in the best meaning of the term. So
not
politics would be
exactly.
precisely about negotiating between tribes.
But you see, the thing is that politics is see, people say everything's political. I mean, yes, from a point of view and from a certain way of thinking, totally. And we know that it's not anything new. The problem is once you try to apply that to your own, what I was saying, to your own personal journey through the world,
Uh-huh.
it becomes an alienating force, basically, right? Because it becomes something that structures things from the outside. It's an intrusion, right? That idea is an intrusion, I think, into a basic human to human understand, I would say, because it's kind of a,
Yeah, but then on the other side, then it's pure existentialism, you know? I think
okay.
it would be interesting to keep both alive.
It would be. I think we need a new one.
Because also what is one without the other, you know?
Right. But I do think we need, I would say we need a creative outburst that proposes a new model. That's what the only thing that I would like to happen is that a new idea, a new book, a new structure, not structure in that way, but more like a proposal for how to live, you know. And I mean, existentialism, I don't even know. Many people use this word like, oh, it's your question is always so existential. What's that? You know, everything is existential.
For me, it's just the opposite of politics.
Yeah, I mean, if you use it in this sense as kind of naked life idea, right?
Yeah.
Which that's not what I.
Or that which lies internally, you know.
I'm interested in like the basic experience of transformation of a human throughout, and how that is done today. You know, that's why I think games are transformative experience because they have duration and they have choice. Right? They have it's a surrogate for a structure like that actually offers you ways to experiment with your own decision making. And it's kind of deeper than it sounds, you know. Actually, you know, people.
So is a great book, no?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know where one would discuss choice there. You know, I mean, yes, of course it's choices because you're talking to it always, but then the game kind of enacts it.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, so the great book, yes, but which book?
I don't know.
Give me an example.
Book. I read this one by Michel Serres called The Parasite.
Yes.
Actually, this is kind of right on point with this existentialism versus, or even systems versus what the world is outside, and how to deal with that. Just that. How can a certain thing take a certain system and blow it out?
Parasite.
Yeah, because this is what it does, right? So if you think of a parasite on a particular body, and if the body is a system, then the parasite is another system, which then become a pair that you have to deal with always in conversation with each other. So they're never independent purely, or never reduced to a kind of system, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll check it out. Is it like nonfiction?
Yeah.
Well, okay, but I was thinking more. I thought when I asked you like which book, I thought you were going to say something like, oh, if you read whatever, Thomas Mann or something from.
All right.
Like the
yeah, but this is so Thomas Mann or Herman Hesse, these kind of characters. This like the glass bead game for me was something like that as well. But now I feel like that's not a time that talks to me anymore.
Exactly, that's what I think. Was going to be my only point. I read almost everything from Thomas Mann, for example, as an example, when I was much younger, right? Like, but does it speak to me? Does the Magic Mountain speak to me now?
No,
it's a question. I
but
don't think so.
But
to some extent.
I mean, I don't like that time anymore in the grander scheme of things.
So it's politics. It's an intrusion of an alien idea into your transformation process.
No, just because I don't feel like we're in the same time.
We're not.
But maybe we are in a similar time as the Baroque, like this kind of game.
I see.
So if we look back and then we see similarities in time. So I don't see this kind of existential crisis the way out of this time, which would be for me Mann and Hesse, both. And so this is literally the sanatorium. So you retreat from life.
Yeah, that was modernity, the kind of the idea of how to become a modern person.
Yeah.
But we have obviously passed that, way past that. We need to become a new kind of post-human subject, or not subject. I don't think we're a subject of anything anymore, even ourselves. But like we need to construct it through different. Mm-hmm. And I think that's some of the main things that maybe one book that I read recently is going in this direction a little bit is Federico Campagna, Technique and Magic.
Yes.
Do you know this?
No.
You should maybe check it out. It's kind of interesting. It's almost like a manual of how to think about these different domains of human thought, right? Like one is the technical, which has to do with, and I would say also the political one, in the way that we talk about it right now, is tied to that idea of techniques of like the breakdown into components and kind of the assembly. And then the other one he calls magic, and it has nothing to do with, I think, magical practices of like whatever. It's not about like that. It's more about like rediscovering.
I'm fully into magic now.
Yeah, really, me too.
But yeah, of course, not David Copperfield magic.
Yes,
but natural, all kinds of natural magic. So there was a distinction in the Renaissance between natural and black magic.
Mm.
And then black magic is obviously what the kind of popular magicians do. But natural magic is just stagecraft. So it's a construction of fictions that are effective, and whose mechanics are completely clear. So it's not illusion at all. It's that which goes beyond it.
Oh yeah, it's not about illusion. I think this is, to me, when you look at the work of great kind of artists and magicians, like someone like Jodorowsky, who I really like, and it's about exactly it's techniques of selfhood, of kind of self-transformation that enable this outbursts of creative energy, or the channeling of whatever you have as a person to be a force that creates something. And I think to me that's the journey that is kind of important in a way.
Or like Duchamp, Duchamp.
Exactly.
Everything
he is a perfect example. That's magic.
In front of you, yeah, and you're still like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
this
Totally.
is beautiful.
I think Duchamp is a great example of that, like dealing with forces of his own time. But you see, the problem is you get, with Duchamp in particular, is you get this kind of sorcerer's apprentice situation.
Yeah.
With his disciples, with many people who have come out of because he made available these forces, right?
Yeah.
And they just used it, no problem. They were just like, oh, now it's here. I think that's kind of AI as well. Like you make these forces available to people through, and then they start using
it's an intelligence that stands on itself, right? So it doesn't need you anymore. Yeah, this is this kind of externalization of a force.
Right? Yeah, but that's the ethics of it, I think. To kind of cycle all the way back what we were starting to talk about, like what is the ethic position? The ethics of it, to me, is that. That's why I'm advocating for understanding the history of art a little bit. Like if you do that, you'll understand that, for example, someone like Duchamp has opened a version of AI.
Yeah,
the way of thinking about the world that is about that.
That's fantastic. Huh? This is AI, proper AI.
Well, that's proper AI, right? And we can see if we just study his trajectory and the trajectory of what he produced, which are two different things, I would say.
Yeah,
we can see where this might go in many ways, and how. And I think like the Goethe poem, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, and then the famous kind of Mickey Mouse kind of film.
All right. Yeah.
Is exactly about that, right? You need an ethical step. You need to know what you're doing before you do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's to me that's politics. It's not, to me, the politics is not about like institutions telling you and structuring the world for you, and then you kind of absorbing that and trying to render everything inside, which makes you extremely anxious and kind of messes with your, right? It, to me, is understanding on your own and trying to have a statement or trying to position yourself
to establish a communication with alien things.
So I agree that it's politics is everything, but not that kind of politics. I think that's also a misunderstanding.
Absolutely. Yeah, this I like very much, to think of all of these things, because
perspective is AI.
Perspective is proper AI. Yeah. Yeah. Because
all
it's a model that works independently of you.
Exactly. Any model that works independently. And
this is why, and then you see all these bloody treatises in the Renaissance, they're all talking about perspective.
Yes, exactly.
Because and this is this moment of culturing.
Yes.
That you have a model that works for everyone slightly differently, but it works. And then everyone sits down and then they attempt to write about it. Okay, we used it in doing a quadratura, and then we did it to paint a portrait and this and that. Yeah, that's funny. And maybe what we need is just time.
Oh, for sure. I think absolutely we need time. It's going to happen. Anyway, I think that kind of the general consensus is going to set in at some point, whether we like it or not. And it's still going to be a statistic mean or whatever of many things, right? Not only especially it's not going to be led by any kind of expert knowledge, which is both good and bad in many ways. But the questions that I was trying to raise about this, like, or kind of the basic questions that everyone has, I think they're still going to be there, and they won't be. They're always going to be left unaddressed in many ways, and I think
it's good that we keep talking about it and deploy it as much as possible in a way.
The answer is always to go forward.
And
I
then
think-
it's yeah, absolutely. And then with these kind of power plays that we were discussing, actually, it's fantastic, you know, because this is the moment of culturing where, like, yeah, anyone and everyone needs to discuss it, because there's no way. And this is what this guy also says, huh? This Sam Altman, the
Yes.
OpenAI guy, which I really like, that he says that governments need to be there, you know, people need to discuss
Everyone
it,
needs to,
because we have no clue what to do with it.
we have no clue. Yes, and but the problem is that, of course, you have immediately people who will tell you, oh yeah, I know,
Yeah.
you know, I'll tell you, you don't have to worry about it, right? And that's, I think, to me, always dangerous. And it's just like in architecture, you get that immediately, like 5 minutes after something is introduced. Like nothing has been figured out. Like people are still experimenting, but someone somewhere is gonna feel the call, the urgent, the itch they need to scratch, that they need to say, they need to fucking claim it immediately.
People are waiting for you.
That? No one is waiting for you, man. Like no one wants your like, why are you so? And that's, I think, another side effect of like us being taught certain ways of understanding art history, like as this kind of competition, linear progression to and competition for visibility.
Linear,
you know, I think
winning.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the most ridiculous things you see is like people claiming that, or inventing a name for like a movement, right? Like, now we have a new style in architecture, right? And now we put it here, and then now we have to make stuff that looks like, or that kind of fulfills that. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
You know, like historically,
if it doesn't transgress a few genres, at least,
yeah,
it's not a thing at all.
It's not a thing. You cannot. It's not how it works, man. I'm sorry. You need to understand it better, right? Like how it works is you make I mean, in literature they call this a primary text. You need a primary text first. You need something that moves it, right? You need the Lord of the Rings or whatever, and then 50 years later, people will invent a genre around it.
Yeah,
because there will be others that are interested in the same aesthetic expression, right? Tolkien did not say, I'm going to now make a new genre that's like fantasy or whatever, epic fantasy, and now I'm going to make a book on it. No, that's not how it works. You need to make a text, you need to make a work first. And then that work needs to enable its own. And this is why I suspect that the real work in AI is actually the platform, the Midjourney, and not any particular style.
Yeah. No, and this ChatGPT as well. I think these are.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, this thing they sent out in space, the record, the big, what's it called? This thing.
Yeah. That was like 60 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the golden.
Yeah, and that's funny because that one has masterpieces on it, right? It has Vivaldi on it, and it has a few other things. And then now, I think if they send out anything in space, it should be ChatGPT, right?
Yes,
because it's such a kind of consolidation of the world. But it's
the funny thing. Okay, about let's say. I was in a bookstore yesterday here in LA, and it's like a pretty serious bookstore. It's like one of the really few ones that is left where people are actually trying to kind of establish that idea, right? And they had this like Midjourney magazine that is it's like a free thing you can just pick up, but it's printed by Midjourney, the company.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's kind of, I mean, I have it here. I mean, it's just a collection of these like images.
Oh, wow. Funny.
But there is no. So what I'm trying to say is I feel like they're trying to make a cultural statement because they know something's happening from their side,
But I think the best they could think of is just to kind of collect some of the drawings or images from Midjourney and put them in a kind of a printed magazine. What is that? How do you? That's not gonna do anything.
No, I have no idea what this is about. But yeah, I agree with you.
What are they trying to do? Clearly,
really along the lines of what you're saying. So they really want to be a platform.
Yeah.
And I think this magazine, I've seen it for the first time now. I had no other information about what else they might be doing, but they want to kill it. They want to do like a paper journal. They want to do like Instagram shit. They want to do this, that. They want to do books, whatever. I think they want to do everything. They will make movies as well,
Yeah, they should.
Yeah, because this is cool that they realize how big they are and what their kind of not responsibility, but what they can be.
Yeah, they have a cultural mission.
Host. Yeah, what they can host. Let's call it that.
I think like this, maybe it's the first step, this magazine that I just saw now. Maybe it's the first step, and maybe through time they will understand much better how to frame things.
Right.
And it's gonna become maybe something. But it was interesting to me that they had a desire to make this.
Yeah.
Right. Because it seems like I think that desire comes, I think, from an early understanding that you have something on your hands that is actually powerful culturally. And I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah. And then they try to spread it as quickly as possible or test out all kinds of terrains where this can take off. Yeah, nice. But then another thing with this Midjourney and ChatGPT as well. So I think it's not a problem if we collapse text and image because it's the same bloody model and it's the same game. But then just with this record with Vivaldi, etc., all the masterpieces, and then on the other side we have ChatGPT going out in space. It's interesting to consider how they're so dramatically different. Because one contains masterpieces and ChatGPT is trained on masterpieces and everything else in the world.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a consolidation of the common sense, which is as well Midjourney.
Yeah.
When we ask for it, a dog holding a baseball bat, right? It will give you a dog holding a baseball bat. And if you ask ChatGPT these kind of questions, you get the same kind of deadpan answers that you would expect if you were on a customer call center. You would ask somebody to do it, and then they were like, "Here it is," and you're happy with it. So then, what I'm trying to get at is this idea of the common sense. So again, we are not in the realm of art at all, because that would be precisely the alienation of the common sense, right? This would be the attack on how we see ourselves as humans. What you were saying.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point that you're making. I think, how far can we alienate this anymore? I mean, see, this is the thing. This is exactly right, what you're saying. But is there, what is, Midjourney is so alienating. Once you actually start looking at it in this way, I think that's the real alienation, that you can do these things. And you can keep producing and estranging in many different ways, right? And it's not only like people tend to dismiss Midjourney. Oh, it's just it's a statistical mean of whatever people think aesthetics is. Yes, at some level, it's true, right? But you could still, if you zoom out of that notion, you understand that it's working differently for everyone, and so many people are using it and producing things. That's the real alienation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you compare that to an exhibition that you can see like in a like Berlin Biennale or whatever, where they're making these like inaccessible whatever things or performances, and then that's not alienating at all compared to this notion that you're dealing with a fully abstract system that has taken off in flight and it doesn't answer to anything anymore, in a way, right? Like you could use it for this, or you could use it for that, but you could use it for who knows what. It's an unknown. So I think, yeah.
But did I get you right? I think I didn't, because I'm thinking it's actually interesting that maybe it's the same with these Biennales as well, that if you produce something with Mid-Journey, it will always have a bit of what we have seen already, right?
That's true.
But
that is always true.
Everything else. But then again, I'm thinking the direction of these Biennales is pure estrangement, right?
Yeah.
But they try to do everything that they think you might not have seen before, right?
Yeah, in many ways. And it just becomes stranger on a first encounter, because on the second and third one, conceptually that's what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And you have to go there and try to like unravel the meanings. The problem is there is nothing behind the unraveling very, very often. Unless we're talking about someone like Pierre Huyghe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is an actual artist. I have to say it, right? That's a major difference when you're dealing with someone like Pierre Huyghe, where the unraveling leads to a series of things and new understandings of the world, right?
Yeah.
But in 99% of the cases, it leads nowhere.
Yeah.
It's just a facade.
No longer part of the world.
No longer. It's for the artist. It's
predictably so.
Yeah.
It actually becomes commonsensical as well.
It's private fantasy. That's what it is. And then the private fantasy becomes adopted by a curator who is a friend of that artist or whatever, and then that becomes physical.
Yes.
So and then it's really. And Mid-Journey, yes, you have private fantasies of people, but they're mostly banal. They're reinforcing existing ideas, sure.
Yeah.
But I do think that we might end up in a world where a few artists discover ways to do something new with it. And that's what I want to see. Yeah. And I love that we have Mid-Journey, because we have this, it makes all this other stuff totally obsolete.
Yeah. No, it's really fantastic. I love it as well. No reason, and it's yet again a new killing of a particular craft.
Yes.
To be able to discuss it on a different scale.
Yes, and I think that's good.
Yeah,
I think that's.
absolutely.
I mean, it's like handmade art. It's fine, but I think historically, and this was actually something that, if you read someone like the art historian from the 50s and 60s, his Art and Illusion, Ernst Gombrich, Gombrich.
All right.
Yeah. He was writing about this, like in Art and Illusion. Basically, he says we are living now in a time where it's available for the people to learn how to draw, for example, realistic human figures, right, quite easily, because the knowledge is there. Right. The knowledge is everywhere. And now if you now 50, 60, 70 years later, you extrapolate that to today, and you have YouTube, you can learn how to draw amazingly well. And that's why you have these channels where 30-year-old somewhere is drawing this amazing, right? Because the knowledge is there. It's not it's beautiful and it works and it's a human expression. Yes. And you can say that all about it, right? Because these are historical tropes that we know. But the problem is that's not why that is not so valuable anymore. It's because the knowledge is there, and it's not. So the art world is trying to say, oh, we are going to alienate or estrange everything as a response to, I think, that skilling and de-skilling that has happened. But
yeah, and I think this
still have to communicate.
Angle on the idea of estrangement in general is weird.
Yeah.
So it's
Like how much longer can we focus on that? Like, okay, that's
no,
not
it
the
has to
only
be
thing that,
like it has to, like, we have to term it to something like a scale shift, like a scale shift, or I don't know,
see.
alienation to me sounds good, because because everything is so weird, and everyone is into weird shit, something like
Yeah,
that.
but when everyone is into, I mean, then what does it mean
Yeah.
anymore?
Yeah.
Much more interested, like the argument from the similar time, which that's like structuralism, right? You have prop in the like literary world establishing the ideas that all the fairy tales share the same structure historically, and they have similar topics, right? And then you have Shklovsky and like talking about this idea of estrangement as and that's a modernist idea, right? Like going away from the subject matter, from the senses into the world of ideas. But we are not in this world anymore. Like, do we need a new structure? Do we need a new? That's maybe what I meant. I think we are missing a little bit of a voice, because you have someone like Jovanovic talking about medium-specific new media, which is fantastic, right? Then you have Boris Groys talking about maybe some, but it's not enough for me. I think we need someone creative to bring a new idea that we can all relate to, or someone more creative.
Yeah, and I think so, particularly with these guys as well, right? So Lev Manovich and Boris Groys specifically, it's too sensible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
you would say even bourgeois in some ways, right?
No, I would say it's too bodily. Like it belongs to one of the senses. So it is with the eye, without considering what we would say next to it. So for me, this is a bit of a problem, that they disconnect things, and then it's like, we see this and this has this particular quality. Okay, but then what does it have to say about the world, besides that as well? So it's too, because for them, it's a question like, what will the new image look like?
Yeah.
That's the problem. But I think what's interesting, and especially with computer games, it's a new contract between text and image.
Yes.
So it's not purely the image at all. And I think this is interesting to for me to think of computer games as. So it's a new kind of relationship, and comics as well, between text and image.
Well, I think comics were maybe I think you're totally right that comics were maybe the forerunner of that.
Yeah.
And they were, and games are just a fantastic example for that, But I think even beyond that, I think the question is, what is the new human like? Yeah. And because we use this word post-human as if we know what it means. What is that?
Yeah, this post-human is one of those things. So we are already post-digital, apparently.
Yeah. But like, then people keep using this. They keep using this stuff, and I'm like, do you know even what this means? Like, what does it mean to be post-human? I think, like what we were talking about, like perspective, right? That's a post-human technology.
Yeah, for sure. It's like an artificial thing. Like, it landed on the planet. It didn't grow from it, something like that.
And because
from outer space, and it turned the world on its head.
Right, because it comes from geometry. It doesn't come from the world of senses. It comes from a purely constructed mathematical idea, right? That has its own model that produces effects in the world, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, we know how that has changed the human, because the human became this kind of prosthetic.
Yeah.
But now we are talking about post-human as if we know what it is. We don't. I think we don't know.
No, I think it's this is one of those gatekeeping terms.
Exactly.
So it's digital. The minute you say that, okay, I have my 5 friends here, and we are all post-digital.
We're all post-digital. Yeah.
Great.
That's exactly.
You find it on Google. Like, really.
And this is what Campagna talks about in the book, where he talks about this idea of like that you're using. I mean, he has a specific name for this. General abstract entity. right?
Yeah.
You kind of use you kind of string together these things in lieu of thinking through them. You're saying, I'm a post-digital, now you have a little pen here.
Right.
That's a general abstract entity. It doesn't mean anything in a way. It's much larger than, or it's much more abstract than anything else that it's actually behind it, right?
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, speaking of we were talking about like perspective as being a alien technology and producing a new kind of human. I think that's exactly what AI is now becoming formalized as a new version of that.
Yeah.
And I think the effects we don't know yet, and I think we should wait a little bit with making proclamations, which is what apparently these people don't understand. Like you cannot claim AI right now because it's going to be very funny in a few years.
Who knows if claiming it means you're in jail tomorrow? Like we're not even there yet.
Exactly right.
No, it's hilarious. But yeah, this is nice. And through Renaissance, through perspective, we find a way to construct ourselves, right?
Well, exactly. I think if something is important here, I think that's important. How do you construct yourself? How do you? I think that's the only thing that came out. I mean, that's why when you read art history, it starts with Vasari because of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that technology, that's where it was subsumed in the world, and it became somehow apparent what will happen. And the rise of this talk of the genius is because I think that's tied. That's why he was using this term, or not. He wasn't using that term, but he kind of implied it, that there was a historical progression of the arts towards, like from Giotto to Raphael and Titian, because it was a perfection, or it was perfecting something, right? But I think that was opened up by perspective in many ways.
Sprezzatura. Also, I'm not too sure about this progress bit.
That was just the argument they had.
Yeah, but I think that's always the kind of salesman pitch.
Yeah.
What I find hilarious with these Renaissance characters is that they were all salespeople, like refrigerator salespeople.
Well, they were Italians, so very convincing. I love. You know what I like? There's a scene. There's a scene in The Sopranos where they talk to someone who owes them money, and he's like, yeah, my people were suffering under the Romans for centuries. Where are the Romans now? You're looking at them. Oh my God. It's one of the most hilarious lines. The
Romans then. Yeah, but then you look around with their patrons, and the way they talk about their patrons in the treatises. My God, this is hilarious. And then I recently went through this one by Filaretti, who was doing this ideal city, I think. And then he makes a beautiful portrait of his patron. My God, he's holding 2 bushes of flower above his head and floating above the ground, and there's a pyramid underneath it. Like, wow. That's how you sell.
But it's funny that when we look at these stories, and we like to, because they're so long ago that you have no access to that social reality whatsoever, right? So you kind of totally, like, if you think about the ancient Greek, right, philosophers, and you have no idea in any way, like how it was and what kind of deal was actually happening, right? So it's easy to have this like super romantic relationship to it, right?
Absolutely, but that's the thing. It tells us more about ourselves, I think.
Exactly.
What we want to believe.
Yes. But that's, I think, one of the main points. Like, what do you want to believe today, and what do people want to believe. I think that's maybe in the background. And I think, AI is a great litmus test for your belief system. And it's because it's going to expose what you're really interested in once you're dealing with it, right? I mean, it's in this way that I'd like to use it also with my students as a kind of a call to adventure, in many ways.
Yeah.
And it's going to expose you to that kind of, and that's where you have a chance to maybe, at least you're going to see what happens with your own. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, for me it's fantastic because it really, I mean, at least conceptually, it kills this idea of I cannot do this.
Yeah.
So then really it's a question of if you can do anything in the world, what would it be?
What would it be?
And then you have to kind of deal with it.
Well, I have to say one thing with this, which is that you can still choose to do very hard things, like things that are objectively hard, right? Like creating a video game is objectively hard. Still, even with all these tools. Well, you can still, if you want, you can, for example, which I'm not doing this. I'm not using.
I think anything of any value is just incredible.
Yeah. So I think there are ways to elevate, really ways to elevate this work. One little experiment I did is like making a graphic novel from Midjourney. But the idea was like, you're not collaging the images on a page. What if you could get Midjourney to make the full page of a graphic novel, right? That was rule number one that I said. So you're not allowed to collage. You're not allowed to make separate images and then collage them. I think that would be fairly easy. Yeah. But the making it difficult was my idea, right? So the idea was like, what if you make a full page, and then whatever you get, then you have to actually write a story on top of that, right? And I think to me that was just it's a thought experiment, and but I do think we need to find ways of making it not difficult for the sake of it being difficult, but just opening up ways to maybe think about it differently,
Yeah, and precisely this I like very much, this exercise you just described, that you take these images and make a story about it.
Yeah.
Because it's really at this level now that we have to discuss a new contract between images and text, right?
I like that idea.
Because we don't, the things that come out of it at first instance, they look like things we know. So that's one. And the alien things that come out, like we need to name them.
Yes.
If they're slightly strange, like you have to invent a story about it. Like otherwise it falls back into all these kind of commonsensical strangeness that we see all around us.
Yeah. I think that I like that point. A new contract. Sounds very judicial. When you play Elden Ring, what's your starting class?
Mine is I think the warrior.
The warrior. I thought you were gonna say confessor.
Confess. I thought about it for a while. I think for me, the only respectable way to start a From Software game is melee. So you can't be a mage or anything.
Yeah, you can do. Normally what I do is I start melee. I always start melee, like a warrior, right? But then the second playthrough is always a mage, because I had so much fun with
yeah. No, same here, actually. I go with pyromancy.
Yeah, you go with pyromancy. I remember that from Dark Souls 3 days.
Yeah.
But my is always like melee first, and normally I am a strength build. And then second one is always an intelligence build, because I want to see like what you can do from the distance.
With the brains.
With the brains. But
what would you do if you had brains?
Exactly. Turns out you still do the same thing, just from the distance.
The jury is still out. Okay, good. I think this is as good a point as any.